This government has the exclusive power. He has the exclusive legal authority. Will he match that authority with responsibility and approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
He's leading on making Canadian steel, lumber, aluminum, and various commodities more available for homes, for big projects. That's what this Prime Minister is doing. He's leading.
We've gone from elbows up to who cares under this Prime Minister. Remember, he said he would negotiate a win and he would get a deal by July 21st.
Unlike the Leader of the Opposition, who would have signed any bad deal put in front of him,
that's right.
The Prime Minister didn't do that. We said we would do the work to support Canadian workers.
Pipelines and Canada-U.S. relations were the hot topics on Parliament Hill today. Prime Minister Carney wasn't in question period, but his announcement was all about responding to U.S. tariffs. So are those things the things that Canadians are most concerned about? Let's ask the founder and chief data scientist of Nanos Research. He's also our CTV pollster, Nick Nanos. Nick, welcome back. How you doing?
Good, Mike. How you doing?
So it seems to a lot of people in Ottawa that the budget kind of under-delivered, or at least was in some sense, you know, underwhelming. How did it land outside of the political bubble?
Well, you know, the thing is that we track every week, you know, the issues and how people feel about the leaders and the ballot numbers. And, you know, right now we see that the Liberals have about a 5-point advantage. It's like 42-37 in favor of the Liberals over the Conservatives. And to put that into context, Mike, 4 weeks ago, it was 39-37. So it was a statistical dead heat. A little bit of a bump for the Liberals coming up. The interesting thing is that the Conservative support, pretty rock solid, so no big change as a result of the budget. Liberals up a little bit. NDP down to 9%. And, you know, the thing is, that's bad for the Conservatives because the Conservatives need that progressive vote to split in order for them to pop up through the middle. So a little bit of movement between the Liberals and the New Democrats coming out of the budget.
As you mentioned, you measured preferred Prime Minister as well. We'll show some of those numbers. There's been successive polls now where we've seen Prime Minister Carney with a lead over Pierre Poilievre. In your opinion, at what point does that kind of opinion with Canadians become kind of cemented and almost immovable in terms of preferred Prime Minister?
Well, usually whoever the Prime Minister is happens to have an advantage because they are Prime Minister. In this particular case, this is a pretty big advantage for Mark Carney over Pierre Poilievre. It's about 27 percentage points or thereabouts. But, you know, the kicker, Mike, is this. You know, for the Liberal support, it's not about people liking the Liberals. It's not about people liking the last 10 years. It's really about Mark Carney. For the Conservative support, which has been steady since the election, right? Still exceptionally high. And in some cases, you know, the thing is at 37%, Stephen Harper won 2 elections with about that level of support. But for the Conservatives, it's not about Pierre Poilievre. It's about people that want change. They don't like the Liberals, and they want to see things go in a different direction. So think of it this way. So we got one party, I think, for the Conservatives. I don't think those Conservative voters care who the leader is. They just want the Liberals out.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Not to say that it could be anyone, but certainly it doesn't really matter as much to them. You've also got some new numbers that are coming out tomorrow about how Canadians are feeling about energy exports, and really timely because of what we could be having, what we expect to have tomorrow between Alberta and the federal government on the MOU. How are Canadians feeling about that now?
So in the new survey that we're just releasing with the University of Ottawa's Positive Energy Initiative, we asked Canadians about the destination for energy exports. What regions or countries should it go to? You know, right now, most of our exports go to the United States. But in this new survey, interestingly, 35% of Canadians wanted to see Europe as the top export destination for energy, followed by Asia at 24%, the U.S. third, Michael, at 19%. So what this speaks to is Canadians looking at future energy exports and not having the United States as a top priority, more likely to look to Europe or Asia for those oil and natural gas exports.
It's interesting because it's almost as if what Prime Minister Carney is trying to do is where opinion is following, or he's responding to that opinion that sentiment that maybe he knew was out there.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both, because, you know, the reality is the United States will always continue to be an important export destination for our energy, and but I think for a lot of Canadians, they just want to see a little diversification, and I think that's where, things like Asia as a market, places like Europe as a market for energy exports really comes into play. So I don't think it's anti-American. I think it's just more, let's diversify who our customers are for energy exports.
Yeah, last question for you. I can't help but think 11 months ago, and I want to take this sort of wide view of all of this now. 11 months ago, the numbers that you have presented and that you have given us today would have looked bizarre, because there's no world in which we would have thought preferred prime minister would have been a Liberal and that the Liberals were ahead. What does that tell you about where this country has come in the last 11 months?
Well, it speaks to the disruption and the game changer that Donald Trump was. And you know what? When Donald Trump says Mark Carney owes him, he's kind of right, because he was a game changer. The Liberals under Justin Trudeau were really on a path to likely decimation, right? Yeah. And he was an unpopular prime minister. People wanted change. And Donald Trump basically changed the math in favor of someone looking at least Canadians looking at alternatives. And so Pierre Poilievre did well in the last election, but Mark Carney, as a person that can manage, or people perceived or thought had a better chance to manage that binational relationship, basically caught fire. But you know what, Michael? He still has to deliver, because talk is not enough, and people's patience as they worry about paying for the groceries and paying for housing will only last so long.
True. Prime Minister Carney called him a transformative prime minister, a transformative president. He's transformed a lot of your numbers. And of course, we know that the Prime Minister can't exactly kick the ball around when he goes for the FIFA World Cup draw next week. Hopefully, he does talk to President Trump. Nick Nanos, Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for this.
Cheers.